In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro announced the beginning of a second peace process, this time with FARC dissidents. European stock markets are down after a collapse in Wall Street and the bankruptcy of Silicon Valley Bank in the United States. And in the Vatican City, Pope Francis marks the 10th anniversary of his papacy with a call for peace. Hello, welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. On Monday, Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced the beginning of a second peace process, this time with the FARC. The head of state reported that a peace talks table will be created between the government and the Central General Staff of the dissidents of the former Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. In this context, the Attorney General's office lifted the arrest warrants of at least 19 members of the group to participate in the peace talks. The head of state asserted that the talks will serve to continue with the agreement signed between the Colombian state and FARC in 2016. On Monday, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, announced new measures to face the mining strike that has been taking place for 12 days in the northwest of the country. The president announced that the legal use of yellow machinery will be controlled at the national level and operations to destroy large dredges owned by illegal mining mafias, which are destroying the territory, will be intensified. On the other hand, the head of state pointed out that the public forces that arrived in the zone will be maintained to guarantee the supply of food and medicines and the attention of patients in healthcare centers. The second edition of the international conference Homeland opened on Monday in Havana, Cuba. The meeting focuses on debates over technological sovereignty. This event takes place at the Che Guevara Hall of the House of the Americas in the Cuban capital, bringing together more than 50 international guests and around 100 specialists to discuss disinformation and hate speeches, as well as the effects of the U.S. blockade against the island on the digital space. According to organizers, the forum has the mission of combining love, art, and fraternity. During the opening session, the president of the House of the Americas, Abel Prieto, reflected on the challenges faced by the left on the region regarding the communication and cultural wars, as well as the need to coordinate forces with common objectives.
One of the main topics of our debate, in addition to very concrete tasks, is how we're going to ensure continuity and stability to these kinds of efforts that are vital. And I will end by saying something that Brent said very clearly, that we also have to build and design the horizons towards which we're heading.
For his part, the director of the José Marti International Institute of Journalism, Ariel Terrero, talked about the tools implemented in the educational process of future journalists.
The great challenge we have is the training of young people, the training of executives, the training of society, the contribution to society of all our knowledge. And one of the tools we have been using for some years at the Institute is precisely what has been called the transversalization of knowledge to other areas.
In Brazil, authorities released 130 people accused of participating in the attempted assault on state institutions on January 8th. The federal Supreme Court Judge Alexandre de Moraes approved a provisional release for those involved in the attempts to destabilize the powers, who will have to adapt to restrictive measures. The judge specified that the beneficiaries of the release cannot leave their city, will have to remain confined to their homes, and will not be able to communicate with other defendants or use social networks. It should be noted that almost 400 people remain in detention, and most of them are accused of incitement to crime and criminal participation. Peruvian authorities declared on Monday a state of emergency for the next 60 days due to the risk posed by heavy rains. The measure was implemented in 13 departments and in the constitutional province of Callao. Officials said their objective is to reduce risk that hit areas and support people affected. The National Institute of Civil Defense has reported that at least 57 people have died and 8 remain missing, while more than 12,000 have been affected by the rains. On the other hand, more than 21,000 houses have been damaged by the precipitations. Authorities of the National Institute of Hydroelectric Resources of Cuba reported that more than 400,000 people in the country are affected by the meteorological drought. In a recent meeting to analyze this issue, Antonio Rodriguez, president of the INRH, explained that the largest number of people affected by the drought are concentrated in Guantánamo, with more than 90,000 citizens, Camagüey with more than 60,000 people, Santiago de Cuba with more than 50,000, Havana with more than 47,000, and closest to Holguín. Moreover, it was reported that between March 1st and 10th, 137 municipalities in Cuba reported no rainfall. Inés María Chapman, Deputy Prime Minister, recalled that this is not the first time that the country suffers an intense drought and pointed out that mainly in the eastern provinces investments have made to the phenomenon. More than 3,000 hectares have been burned in Argentina after the recent forest fires in the department of Ituzaingó. The nation's Emergency Operations Command reported that more than 150 firefighters and 2 hydroplanes are working in the area to put out the fires. The command also said high temperatures and strong droughts have sparked at least 17 wildfires, 6 of which are still active. Authorities have urged neighboring populations to take all the necessary safety measures and have confirmed that so far no fatalities or injuries have been reported. In Africa, more than 60 people died after Cyclone Freddie hit Malawi and Mozambique for the second time in a month. According to authorities, dozens of people were reported injured in the wake of Freddie. Over the weekend, southern Africa was hit by torrential rains that caused flooding and landslides. Authorities reported the inaccuracy of the damage as telephone signals and power supplies were affected by the weather phenomenon. Meteorological officials registered Freddie as the cyclone with the largest duration and assured that climate change has strengthened the rains. We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English for more. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. European stock markets are down after a collapse in Wall Street and the bankruptcy of Silicon Valley Bank in the U.S. On Monday, the IBEX, Spain's stock exchange main reference index, was down nearly 4%, while banking stocks continue to plummet in the region. In France, the Paris Stock Exchange fell 2.95%, while the German city of Frankfurt reported a fall of 3.12%. In view of the situation, concerns about the financial stability and liquidity dominated the market despite the intervention of the U.S. authorities to curb the consequences of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and the preemptive shutdown of Signature Bank. In this context, world prices of Brent oil, the European benchmark, plunged 4.5% to $79 a barrel. U.S. President Joe Biden acknowledged that the capital system caused the country's financial crisis following the collapse of Silicon Valley and Signature banks.
Investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works. Requirements. I'm going to ask Congress and the banking regulators to strengthen the rules for banks to make it less likely this kind of bank failure would happen again, and to protect American jobs and small businesses.
And U.S. President Joe Biden met with the Australian and British leaders on Monday to discuss a new nuclear submarine pact. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak joined the U.S. President at the San Diego Naval Base in California as part of the AUKUS Alliance's work agenda, which has the primary goal of bringing Australia into the group of navies that own nuclear-powered submarines. Four German airports suspended their flights on Monday after a 24-hour strike by airport workers. The strike was called by the United States trade union and paralyzed the airports of Berlin, Hanover, Bremen, and Hamburg, the latter involving some 2,000 employees from all the companies. The union said it has been negotiating for years with the Confederation of Aviation Security Companies for better working conditions and wage increases, as well as for a better collective agreement on overtime pay for the security and the service personnel at commercial airports. Chinese President Xi Jinping will participate in dialogues between China's Communist Party and international political parties. A spokesman for the International Department of the Central's Committee of China's Communist Party announced the participation of the president via a video conference next Wednesday. The spokesperson added that the head of state will give a keynote speech at the opening ceremony and will join the political dialogues. In the Vatican City, the highest authority of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis, has asked for peace as a gift on the 10th anniversary of his papacy. In March 2013, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, then Argentina's Cardinal and Archbishop of Buenos Aires, became at the age of 76 the first non-European to be elected to the highest position within the Catholic Church. This was also the first time a Jesuit assumed the pontificate and took the papal name of Francis. On Monday, when asked about his 10-year anniversary as Pope, Francis stated in an interview that the only gift he would wish is for peace. And during his decade as the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis has presented the world with a different kind of papacy in contrast with his predecessors. From decentralizing power, increasing transparency, and providing greater roles for lay people and women, Francis has implemented fundamental reforms of the Roman Curia, the Catholic Church's central government, which came into force in 2022 despite internal opposition during the past 10 years. Francis has advocated dialogue with all faiths, especially Islam, notably in a trip to Iraq in 2021, and repeatedly denounced the arms trade in his constant calls for peace. Since his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si, the Pope has continuously urged the world to act quickly to tackle climate change, saying rich countries bear the most responsibility. Son of Italian immigrants to Argentina himself, Francis has also criticized what he sees as a global indifference to the refugee crisis worldwide. teleSUR English is continuing to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries via StarSat, dial 461, and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. Let's take one last short break, but don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. A trip to Russia is the title of the joint Russian-Armenian cultural event of psychological support of the Syrian children affected by the earthquake of last February 6, an initiative that is part of the many signs of solidarity the Syrian people need so badly in the current situation they are experiencing. Let's have a look.
The imaginary journey takes place through the interaction between the event organizers and the children in a drawing session depicting symbols of cultural heritage of the Euro-Asian giant, such as the famous Russian doll Matryoshka, the Kremlin, and the Russian flag. An event that, in addition to the cultural knowledge it offers to the children, helps them to regain joy amidst the hardship of war, blockade, and the earthquake.
Currently, in the post-earthquake stage, the Russian Cultural Center, in addition to cultural activities such as psychological support for the affected children, is also working and collaborating to collect donations and assistance and to distribute them in the affected areas, as well as to organize material and financial aid from Russia.
Many families are homeless, and there are many sad stories. And that is why today we are trying through these activities to feel a little happiness and forget all the hardships. And with the support of our friends, we are leaving all the pain behind and looking forward to the future with faith.
An impromptu dance session of traditional Russian and Armenian dances is also part of the trip that was the brainchild of the Armenian Relief Society, a country whose citizens do not forget how Syria welcomed them when they were forced to leave their homeland between 1915 and 1923. Armenians resident on Syrian soil had never stopped supporting their Syrian brothers since the war began in 2011 to date.
The people of this country have suffered from a terrorist war of more than 12 years. Then a brutal Western economic war, and are currently suffering from the effects of the earthquake. And for this reason, and in gratitude for the support offered by the people of this country to our Armenian people, we try in every possible way to cheer up these children and help them forget the catastrophe that hit them. And we do it with the support of our friends from Russia.
Most of the current activities focus on children who suffer the aftermath of the war and are currently suffering the consequences of the earthquake. So even though we are not psychologists, we try to help these children to recover their life.
The activities carried out by Armenia and Russia, as well as other neighboring countries, make a difference in the current scenario of distress experienced by the Syrian people. These acts, beyond material assistance, nourish with hope and faith the new generations born and raised in an environment scarred by war, blockade, and natural disasters.
On Monday, Iranian authorities pardoned 22,000 people who participated in the recent anti-government protests. The head of the Iranian judiciary, Gholam Hossein Mohseni, said the measure takes place on the eve of the holy month of Ramadan for Muslims. The official added that those now pardoned did not commit theft or violent crimes. The oldest Palestinian prisoner in Israel has been released on Monday after 17 years in prison. A spokesperson for the Palestinian Prisoners Club reported that 83-year-old Fouad Shubaki had been released from the Israeli Ashkelon prison and was on his way to Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. On arrival in Ramallah, Shubaki visited the tomb of the late Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, to whom he was a close ally with. Palestinian officials jostled to get close to the octogenarian draped in a Palestinian keffiyeh.
There are many tasks and projects for us to do. We should work to achieve them, despite all the threats and hardships. And although we were abandoned, we should not abandon our people, our homeland, our sons.
Nepal Congress leader Ram Chandra Pudel was sworn in as the nation's president for the next 5 years. Pudel was elected on March 9th by members of the House of Representatives, the National Assembly, and the 7 provincial assemblies. After being sworn in at the presidential palace, The congressman leader was congratulated by the outgoing president, Bija Debi Bandari, and by various international political authorities. Pudel is the third elected president of the Himalayan country, which officially became a republic in 2008. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also be sure to follow us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.